I believe that I can reliably count on the Eric Primes to help me triage lower level decisions. I think incumbents have a real challenge. Incumbents want you to stay in their ecosystem. I got mental models and notes I need to go back now and work with my team of agents to...
Yeah, get your AI skills to sort it out, read the transcripts. Welcome to Supercompanies, my quest to understand how the most interesting and valuable companies are being built in the age of AI. I'm your host, Greg Shove, 7-time founder and CEO of Section AI. This episode, we're talking with Eric Porres, Global Head of AI at Logitech. Logitech bought his company a few years ago, and Eric was running innovation and software teams inside of Logitech as his day job. And he was also moonlighting as the head of AI training at Logitech. And he personally trained over 800 Logitech employees on how to use AI. He was tapped to be Logitech's first head of AI about 18 months ago and is now global head of AI. So let's get into how Logitech is adopting AI at scale and the lessons they've learned. Here's Eric. So I just want to start here first, and then we'll talk about super companies. Because you've been in this game as long as me. I mean, in the last 3 years, you've been heads down and then helping a lot of other people, thousands at Logitech, become AI enabled and really change the way they work. What's your sense of this moment? What's going on in this idea of anxiety and what you think is going on inside of a typical organization right now?
A typical organization, I think you'll have fear, loathing, expectation management, as well as mismanagement. We're seeing that in the Anthropic labor report, for example. They're seeing some compression is in new hires. Where does apprenticeship go? How do you learn a new job if that rung of the ladder is now cut out from under you? And then at the same time, if you're an employer, you're saying to yourself, how am I going to grow? Are you thinking far enough along to say, how am I going to grow the next generation of leaders if I'm not hiring the next generation of leaders and then bringing them into that model? So I think there is certainly some uncertainty there. There's also uncertainty. I know this personally. I have had less sleep in the last 2 months than in the last 2 years, but not out of fear, out of curiosity.
So you're one of these people that's just like jazzed. And
Greg, 100%.
This is why you're sleeping less.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to how we started, though. Congratulations. I think a promotion. You're now the chief AI officer at Logitech. And I know you personally trained hundreds of people at Logitech early in order to begin this transformation of the workforce.
It started over a decade ago when I was the chief marketing officer of a company called Rocket Fuel. My history with both understanding, interpreting, and activating AI stretches back when we called it artificial intelligence and big data. Then we went through the quiet period, if you will, before the transformer architecture eventually became invented. And then when I said, okay, well, what is this open AI company? And then when ChatGPT became available, and the moment I had 3 conversations with ChatGPT, I knew that this was going to be a transformational moment in history. And so I need to embed myself as much as I possibly can into this new way of working, this new way of communicating. And so that became this iterative way in which one could work with this always on demand thought partner. And then that became a place in which I said, okay, look, I need to then transfer this knowledge that I have created because I've gone very deep into this subject. I've had this history, and I need to be able to do that now, not just for me, but for everyone around me. And so when Section's AI MBA became available, I took the AI MBA course. The capstone of the course was one in which you could say, hey, okay, how do you want to apply AI to a project? And I said, look, I will be most successful. My company, as in Logitech, will be most successful if I could democratize this knowledge early and often and spread it to as many people as possible. I said, look, I think this is really important for us as a company, as a business. And so then I wound up teaching 824 people, sometimes one-on-one, sometimes in small teams and sometimes in larger groups, about how do you master the moment of AI now, not just for the hardware that we sell, but for the people who we employ, because ultimately the people are going to be the great maximizer when it comes to taking advantage of AI for its utmost potential. And so that's how I became head of AI at Logitech last year.
People are really struggling with this stuff. And you're saying fear and uncertainty, which doesn't seem like a very good environment to introduce new technologies.
Oh, but look, it was the same thing in 1999. Oh, what do we need a website for?
I'm going to push back there because, yeah, sure. Same questions around how useful is this technology and what its enduring value. We didn't say, is this going to take my job? There might have been a few people that were impacted by e-commerce websites or something, but I agree around the benefit of these technologies takes longer for them to come. And there's a lot of skepticism and uncertainty up front. But I don't think there's ever been this level of uncertainty around how's it going to affect my job. I never heard anyone say to me, what about my kids? Is the internet going to make it hard for my kids to earn a living? I hear those questions all the time, as I'm sure you do.
I think that's a fair point. I suppose the internet example would be like, well, yeah, will travel brokers go away? Different industries were completely upended in Internet 1.0. So it's not an either or proposition. That is a real problem. It's a real problem because a decade ago, Eric Brynjolfsson and Andy McAfee wrote a book called The Second Machine Age, Work, Progress, and Prosperity at a Time of Brilliant Machines. And the last couple of chapters of it, now a decade ago, was about we're going to face a labor crisis. We're going to face an upskilling crisis. Here are things that governments and institutions might want to be thinking about now. And we didn't. But you're right that there's an uncertainty. And I would say now is the time to be the great consumer of AI so that you are prepared for whatever the next generation of AI will bring. There are some jobs for which it is difficult to upskill and find replacement labor opportunities quickly. And so it is not across the entire spectrum of management or semi-skilled labor, but there are certain categories where, yeah, I would be worried. AI right now is the worst it will ever be. And by the way, if AI ceased to exist, if the models didn't get at all smarter tomorrow, we would still have at least 5 years of exploration to do that. Papers that are coming out now are papers written about, oh my gosh, I did this incredible thing with GPT-4. You're like, what? GPT-4?
But let's talk about then this idea of anxiety and doom and gloom. As a chief AI officer now for Logitech, what's your role in lowering that? How do you think about your role in both driving proficiency and lowering anxiety?
I would say part evangelist, part optimist, and part pragmatist. The evangelism is taking advantage of all of the opportunities that exist within the company with all of the applications that we have available to us. Pragmatic optimism is giving very real examples, certainly on a week-by-week basis, and with teams that I work with on a day-to-day basis. Here's how you can go from AI curious to AI competent and then continue to build on competency to fluency.
I want to go back to anxiety, though, because I think it's going to be our way to talk about super companies. I would suggest that startups don't have these challenges, two in particular. So if you're building a new company today and you're growing, certainly in Silicon Valley, where I live and work, they're building where everybody's jacked on AI because they don't have the anxiety about job loss or how will impact my professional standing or career, or whatever. And the second thing they don't have is the legacy workflows get in the way of adopting AI. So talk about both. What are you doing to help the rest of Logitech with both of those challenges?
I guess the way I would define maybe a super company, it's not just one that talks about AI a lot. The way I evaluate that is like when people can move from an idea to some kind of artifact faster, or when products become more intelligent in a way that customers actually feel. When a company learns faster than its competitors, I think that's you start to see the shape of what a super company can be. At the same time, we are absolutely in a phase where there are a lot of flowers blooming because you want to have broad experimentation at the edge. But the next phase is just as important, which is pruning, prioritizing, and scaling what proves to be valuable. And so otherwise you get noise instead of this compounding advantage. And so to your point about startups, they don't have to prune. They certainly have to prioritize. I would also say I was a CMO of 4 different companies at different stages of growth or hypergrowth. And so I've seen this firsthand where many startup founders want to build the next thing first instead of codifying both what works internally as well as making sure that they're maintaining happy customers. So sometimes your best offense is a great defense. Every founder needs to be mindful of what is my revenue per employee. At the same time, I also need to look at how am I splitting my time between acquisition and retention. And like all things, it is a balance.
You mentioned RPE. Let's use that as one of our definitions for a super company, at least mine. I believe that super companies will be defined by one differentiating factor, if you will, one capability. That is, they know how to turn inference, that's just Silicon Valley's fancy term for AI, into sustaining economic value faster and better than their peers. In many or maybe all other respects, super companies in the future are probably like the best companies today. Good products, good services, happy customers, customers that return.
By the way, great distribution.
Which, in fact, you could argue that's going to be more important because we're going to be flooded with more entrants. And so the buyer is going to be overwhelmed, I think, with choice. But I think super companies are going to be defined by the management team and then all the way down through the org, from the top to the bottom. They know how to use inference and deploy it to its highest economic good or value faster, better, more efficiently. That's what makes a super company. The question is, do you agree with my hypothesis of what will define a super company? Their ability to turn inference into enduring economic value faster than their competitors.
I think that's principally right. And I think you have to distinguish between knowledge work versus durable goods.
For sure.
I can only build this mouse at a certain output frequency. You can make the hypothesis, okay, yes, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I can deploy just-in-time production. I can do just-in-time production completely robotically. If I need to build suddenly 2 million mice tomorrow, because again, the Estonian government has given me a contract, we need new mice and we need 2 million of them and we need them tomorrow.
Absolutely. If you can introduce inference, robotics, automation, and so on into your manufacturing processes, your distribution processes, then likely you'll get economic value there. And if you do it ahead of your competitors, better, faster, you'll be the super company and they'll be the laggard.
Greg, maybe the most important part that you're describing there is this notion of there are some companies that have introduced AI labs. And I think that's a mistake because what that's doing is it's creating this aura of power reserved for the few, as opposed to saying, no, we actually want to democratize the AI capabilities and abilities for every person that we can possibly have. So the ability to deploy that quickly is, yes, absolutely going to be a comparative advantage.
Let's check down this list of things that people are doing to help themselves transform, if not into a super company, at least into an AI-enabled company. Let's go through the list because you've already said one. Let's cross it off the list. Let's just cross off AI labs or centers of excellence or innovation labs. Your point of view is don't do that. Do you say don't do it at all?
Like in our case, we have 135 AI champions. It's a volunteer organization.
Answer the question. I gave you a choice. It was yes or no.
No.
Fine. It's a no. Let's get to the next question then. Chief AI officer or head of AI, the job you're in. Everybody says, I don't have a head of internet. I don't have a head of mobile. I don't have a head of cloud. So why the hell do I need a head of AI? I have a point of view, but I want to hear yours. Do you work yourself out of a job at some point? How do you think about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Ask me this question a year from now, it might change. But the way I think of it right now, part of the reason why the head of AI role and now the chief AI officer came to be was that there were 100 people thinking about AI 1% of the time.
Yep.
And so in order to be able to connect the dots like we've been describing in this conversation, I do think you need to have at least one person that all they do, eat, sleep, breathe, poop, AI all the time. Whereas I'm saying, I want 7,000 people. I want 7,000 flowers to bloom. And so that's where I think the true value comes from. And I do think you need at least one person who is the...
I'm sold. You have 7,000. I have 40 people, and I just hired our first head of AI. We're using AI all the time. We're an AI company. Everybody's jacked on AI, and I could still feel and see the fact that we had more to get from AI. We're moving on to the next question. Champions, same question. Do we need them? Is the first question, and for how long?
I think a company will always need to have AI champions. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to do it both on a region basis as well as on a business group basis. So I've looked at it both horizontally as well as vertically, because ultimately you want to be able to talk to a peer. Hey, here's a problem that I have in my legal team, in my people and culture team, in my creative team, my design team, my hardware, my firmware engineering, my operations team, et cetera. I want to be able to talk to that person peer to peer. So I think the peer-to-peer learning that happens there will continue. And I will generally introduce new concepts first to champions. I want to see whether those ideas resonate with the champions group, because the champions group is a microculture of what the macro culture is at the company.
Enabling employees to build their own agents. So an individual...
1,000% yes.
Yeah, so that's a hard yes for you.
Got to do it.
Make the case for it. I'm a grumpy CIO who's freaked out about security and data and all kinds of concerns.
I've used this quote before. Retired General Eric Shinseki, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance even less. That's dinosaur era thinking. You can always create a sandbox, but you can't ignore agents. Our friend Bryce just wrote about this today, where an employee is no longer an individual contributor. Mm-hmm. They potentially have an army, or at least maybe a SEAL team worth of AI personas and AI capabilities that they can take advantage of to solve a particular problem.
Okay, here's my next one. Consultants. Deloitte, Accenture, should we outsource our transformation and our AI acceleration to some consultants?
For my consultant friends who are out there, I'm ready for the pitchforks. The answer, I think, is no, because a company with our 45 years of history, that's in 45 years of organizational and institutional knowledge that's encapsulated in these human beings. And I don't necessarily need a consultant to unearth that information. They're learning on my dime. Maybe this is your next question, is about the future of software. Software has become much harder to sell into our company because we're in a similar place where we are so on our toes that we can conjure the future that we need to meet the skills and demands that we need for our people, rather than ingest another piece of software.
Yeah, well, let's go back to our lens, though, of a super company. And I want to be a super company at Section, meaning in 10 years when we look back, hopefully we'll look at Section and say they're in the very top tier of their category with great RPE and great margins and a sustained profitability and so on. And I'm trying to imagine my company in 10 years. Will we still be using Salesforce? And we'll be using some sort of HRIS system of record, whether it be Workday or Dayforce or something like that. I feel like we will, Eric. Like I hear you on, we're going to be building a lot of custom automations, custom agents, maybe custom software for internal use. I'm not yet, as a CEO, buying into the fact that as much as I'd love to get rid of Salesforce or other systems of record, they just seem to have a lot of value to me, and or I'm busy doing other stuff, creating products and services that I can sell and monetize.
I think incumbents have a real challenge. What do incumbents want you to do? Incumbents want you to stay in their ecosystem. They're saying, oh, we're going to introduce our AI agent to do the following. No, actually, I don't want that. It's a transfer of data, my own data, in somebody else's system back to me. I don't want that to sit within the confines of any one of these systems of record.
I do buy that, and I love the way you say it. Like, it's my data. I'm pushing it through someone else's system so it can come back to me, and maybe that could be shorter and cheaper. 40% of our revenue is selling consulting, selling advisory services to our clients so they can get most value from our software. And my advice is, if you want to become a super company, you won't do it with consultants. This is for the best and the brightest inside the organization. Calling Deloitte to help you run your transformation seems to be a giant waste of time and money, and will fail. That's from someone who sells a lot of consulting hours to our clients. My goal is to sell those hours and then get out, right? And have our clients really be self-sufficient faster and run their own transformations. One last question, then I want to talk about skills. When I talk to a lot of prospects, meaning other companies who have a single head of AI, they seem underfunded or understaffed for the challenge ahead of them. I'll routinely meet a head of AI for a 25,000 person organization. It feels like to me there should be 10 people on that team. This is a massive transformation that will yield enormous economic value if it succeeds. And I understand it needs to be distributed out to everybody, as you said, that ultimately every employee is transforming themselves and their own work and so on. But it just feels like to me, and this is my last question, why don't you have 5 headcount, Eric, or 10? And can I help out there?
It was just me in this role until approximately October of last year, where I added 1 person. There is a team of people that are responsible for the infrastructure and the technology as well. And I think I can make a pretty good case for adding someone when I feel it's right. And I think if we had this conversation a year from now, I don't think there'll be 10 people. You just need to bring your super company A game to be part of that group, because I have to trust that person. I have to evaluate their judgment, ability to communicate effectively with stakeholders that are both horizontal and vertical, all the way from the CEO to the intern.
I want to highlight something you just said, which is really tough to find, but I think it's so needed in this moment. Someone that can go high-low in terms of talking about this stuff. That's a really good point. I want to call that out for others. That's exactly what heads of AI and their teams are doing. They're going to be in with an executive in the morning and then talking to a marketing analyst in the afternoon kind of thing. Let's talk about skills. You said something pretty provocative. You think the most important ability for a knowledge worker will be their ability to codify their job or their responsibilities, their tasks into skills. And I don't think you mean skills as we normally talk about them. You mean AI skills. Because I would imagine inside of every super company will be super employees. What we all need to be is someone that is willing to codify our work, our judgment, our mental models into AI skills, automations, workflows, so that others can take advantage of them. And that if I do that as an employee, I won't necessarily lose my job. In fact, this is the most valuable employee. If you do this, you're not putting yourself at risk. This is how we're all going to work. Because if you've got 10 agents or 10 skills working on your behalf, your comment earlier about Bryce Chalamet at OpenAI, you're managing your own little army of agents. This is not to put you out of work. You're saying we all need to think this way and work this way.
100%. You have to be a really good manager. If you're a good manager, you know how to describe how to accomplish this particular goal or task. Most human beings of a certain age, state, and experience have low, medium, and high level projects, decisions that we need to make. I believe that I can reliably count on the Eric Primes, if you will, to help me triage the lower level decisions and lower level data activations that I do not need to babysit as well. And again, the models are getting better. Hallucinations are dropping to zero. The short answer is yes, each one of us, Greg, if you don't have a skill that you've built for yourself, like how does Greg operate? How does he think, behave, act? And I'm starting to do this. I am writing more skills about myself and about these heuristics that I apply, such that in the future, I might actually, as the volume of the AI work slop intensifies, I would run that through the litmus test of my skills, say, hey, here's the stuff that's just hit me in the last 24, 48 hours, AI work slop triage.
You understand how crazy this sounds, right? I don't disagree, right? But it feels like there's an arms race going on. Your AI is generating stuff you're passing over to me. And now I'm using my AI to screen it and filter it.
I'm not just saying, hey, Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, figure this out. The personalization piece, the contextual understanding of like my ways of working or the business's ways of working or our AI engineering ways of working is highly relevant to this kind of curation filter, because it's no longer AI against AI. I am augmenting my intelligence with my ways of working for the purposes of doing that triage. It goes back to your AI MBA, doing that audit, your high value tasks and low value tasks. But now, instead of just auditing, you're going to transfer those into individual skills for each one of those tasks that you defined. And then that is going to be a way in which you can create an operating model for yourself to work with AI in the future.
Which will not lay you off. It will make you a super employee, or you should go work for someone else who wants to build a super company. That's my take on it, right? The super companies in 10 years, they will attract the best talent. They will attract capital. We need to transform our current company into a super company or go work for another company that is determined to be one. Sounds like you are determined now as Chief AI Officer. Again, congratulations, to help Logitech become a super company. A lot harder when you're big, but it sounds like you guys are on the way. Listen, Eric, as always, love talking with you. Appreciate you sharing your lessons, insights, and crazy predictions, one of which was hallucinations are going to be zero. We'll talk about that the next time we get together. Thanks again for joining us on Super Companies.
Greg, thank you very much for having me. Great conversation. Always thought provocative. I got mental models and notes. I need to go back now and work with my team of agents to...
Yeah, get your AI skills to sort it out. Read the transcript. All right, thanks, man. Take it easy. So I always enjoy talking with Eric, and I think he represents what every organization needs right now. I hear all the time from CEOs that I don't need a head of AI. That's just bullshit. At this moment, we all need a head of AI. And I think Eric is a good example of the kind of person who should be your head of AI. He personally trained hundreds of people first to understand the blockers and the anxieties and the kind of upskilling needed to get people to be able to really leverage these tools in their day jobs. Maybe this position won't exist in a few years, but I think in this moment, we all need one. In fact, I'm hiring one in Section. What I love about Eric is that he follows some of the key principles of leading transformation. He shows, not tells. He's building agents himself. He's building his own automations. He's sitting with others and showing them how to do it, not just walking around preaching AI or posting on LinkedIn. He's data-driven, and he's committed to really understanding the benefits, the impact, the ROI of AI, not just in usage, but also in real business value. He also understands the value of champions. He knows he can't do this alone. Logitech is a large organization spread across the globe, and he's enlisted managing and supporting his AI champions so they can spread the word. So listen, in these moments, we all need someone like Eric Porez. Go find your own. Next episode, we'll be speaking with Michael Dominic, our new head of AI at Section. Yes, I need a head of AI. Why? Because I still think there's more we can get. More economic value, productivity, and growth from AI at Section, even though we use these technologies every day, most of us every hour. By the way, Michael was the head of AI user testing, an 800-person software company based in New York before he decided to join Section. In the meantime, you can find me online at gregshove.com, where you can sign up for my new newsletter, Supercompanies. And if you got a second right now, leave us a rating or review. It'll be a big help to us and help people find the show. Talk soon.